Hi everyone, Aiden here with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install this CURT Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on our 2022 Ford Maverick. With this being a Class 3 hitch, it is going to have a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening that you can use to mount up your ball mounts, bike racks, cargo carriers, any sort of hitch mounted accessory you might need. When using those accessories, they will utilize the standard 5/8 hitch pin and clip to secure it in place in the hitch pin hole. And then if you do plan on towing, the safety chain loops are more than large enough and easy to get to for your standard hooks, as well as some of your more oversized ones if you've got those too. As far as weight capacity goes, the hitch is going to be able to handle a gross trailer weight rating of 4,000 pounds. That's how much it can tow. And it has a tongue weight of 600 pounds. That's the downward pressure on the end of the receiver tube. Now with this, you want to keep in mind the vehicle's weight capacity as well, because you do want to go by the lowest rated component. Just because the hitch is rated at that doesn't mean your Maverick is either. Something to keep in mind is the distance from the ground to the top inside edge of your receiver tube opening. That's going to be 17 7/8 of an inch. That's going to be really helpful for figuring out if we do have a ball mount in here, what rise or drop we need to match our trailer and tow level. One other measurement to keep in mind is the center of the hitch pin hole to the bumper. And that for us is going to be right at 2.5 inches, which is pretty much exactly flush with the end of the receiver tube. That's nice because the receiver tube doesn't stick out too far, but that measurement can be helpful for any hitch mounted accessories like a bike rack. If we do have that bike rack folded up, that'll tell us if we have enough clearance to have it folded. And the install process for this isn't too bad either. Even if you don't have a set of lifts or ramps, there's plenty of room to work under there, and everything that you need to attach it is readily visible and pretty easy to work around. So let's go ahead and check out that process now. The first thing we're going to do when putting the hitch on is actually lower down our exhaust. I'm just going to grab a cam buckle strap to support the exhaust as we lower it down, hooking it into some points underneath the vehicle, and then tightening up a bit. And then as I let the exhaust down, we can let this support it. For the exhaust hangers, there's going to be 3, 1 by the exhaust tip and 2 up front by the muffler. You can just take a pry bar or something to unseat these from the posts that they're on. It may take some working around to get it to pop off, but just make sure you do that for all 3, and then that cam buckle strap we put in place before will help support it. And with all 3, we can lower the exhaust down just a little bit by loosening that cam buckle strap to give us a little more room to work. On the passenger side of the truck, there's this underbody panel. We need to remove that using our 7mm socket. We've got 8 screws located around it. 1 here, 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 2 near the front, and then we've got a plastic push pin up top, and then over here, 1 more of those screws. I'm just going to be using a socket and ratchet for this. And make sure you set these to the side because you will be reusing them when you reinstall this panel. For the push pin up top, there's a small intersection that you can pry out, and then we can get the base section after that inner part is popped up to remove the whole push pin from the panel. And then it's just a matter of kind of flexing these panels out and taking this down. Set this to the side because we will reuse it. On the same side as that panel was, up on the frame rail, there's going to be 2 factory bolts. Use an 18mm socket to remove those. And then on the side of the exhaust, there are 2 10mm bolts holding the exhaust hanger bracket on. One head is on the back side and one is visible for the camera right here. Once the exhaust hanger bracket is down on the driver's side, we can go for those 18mm bolts from the factory on that side. Your kit's going to come with 2 carriage bolts, as well as 2 spacer blocks and 2 fish wires, 1 for each side. So what I'm going to do is thread the carriage bolt onto the fish wire, get that the rest of the way on there, and then I'm going to carefully slide the spacer block onto the end, and we're going to reverse fish wire this up into the frame right behind where we removed those 18mm bolts from. So this is actually forward on the truck, but it's a large slotted hole. We'll feed the head of the carriage bolt up first, and then follow that up with the spacer block. And then you can just bring that back down through, leaving those fish wires attached. And before we do anything else with those fish wires or the mounting points, you want to take a look at the bumper cutout. So you have a couple of options here. You can either cut a portion of it out and leave the panel in place, or remove the panel entirely, coming to the 2 rivets on the side that hold it in place. This is actually my truck, and I'm going to go for just removing the whole panel altogether, because if I do want to modify it later on, I can always do that. For our drill bit, I'm going to be using an 11/64. Then we can just pop this out. With the rivets removed, there's 5 of these tabs around the panel holding it in place, so you will need to flex those out the correct way to remove the panel. Those top ones are a bit hard to reach, so pushing on them with a trim panel tool really helps. We're about to raise the hitch up into position, but I want to go over the hardware real quick first. So for those threaded holes that we removed factory bolts from, you're going to have these M12 screws with a conical tooth washer with those teeth facing up. Those will go into the threaded holes. And then for those carriage bolts that we had the fish wire on, they'll get a flange nut. Obviously you want to remove that fish wire once you've got the hitch in position. What we'll probably do is get one of these in place on either side to hold the hitch in position. Then it's a lot easier to remove that fish wire, get the nut in place, and get all the other hardware in place. It's best to grab a friend for this step. With the hitch in hand, you can feed your fish wire through the frontmost hole on the hitch and raise it up into place around our exhaust. And we'll take one of those screws and thread it into probably that middle threaded hole just to support the weight of the hitch so we can tighten everything down properly. With everything held up in place, it's a lot easier to get the other one threaded in. Last but certainly not least, we can remove our fish wire very carefully, and then putting some pressure on the side of the bolt, thread on the flange nut. After running those all down by hand on both sides, you can tighten up your hardware and then torque it to the specifications found in your instructions. There are different torque specs for the M12 fasteners as well as those flange nuts, so make sure that you are looking out for that. And after we torque down one, we can just repeat that process for all the other hardware. Next, we have to put our plastic panel back in place, but there is going to be some trimming required. Flipping this around, you can see I've already made my mark. This is kind of where our spare tire is sitting, and you want to leave about an inch of space at the bottom, all the way across about 9 inches, in a 45-degree angle line up, and then up to the top with about an inch of space right there. Those measurements are in your instructions, and depending on the cut and where you make your marks, you may have to trim things up just a little bit more or less, but the good thing is you can just start small and trim more as you go. after you take this piece fully off, you can do any sort of trimming and fixing the edges that you might want to. Once everything's cut to our liking, we can give it a test fit. And again, if you started with just a little bit less, you may do a couple test fits before you find exactly what you're looking for. But this panel will just pop back in place where it was before. And I'll start with securing it on that stud and our push pin. And then we can go back through and reinstall all of the remaining screws. Then all we need to do is rehang our exhaust. Everything's going to be the exact same except for right by the end of the exhaust where we can take our hanger and actually hang it up on the hitch rather than that hanger that we removed. That hanger will just slide onto the post right here on our hitch, and then we can hang up the exhaust on the other end of that hanger and repeat that process for our other two exhaust hangers near the muffler. Overall, that install process was really straightforward. It didn't require any drilling into the frame, which I was a big fan of, and if I didn't want to trim this outer panel, I didn't have to. It's a great fit on the Ford Maverick, and that'll do it for our look at and installation of this CURT Class 3 custom fit trailer hitch receiver. Thanks for watching.